Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ComicBase live stream, and I am your host, Pete Bickford. And apparently, the auto switcher is not doing its thing today. So, another perfect launch to another perfect show. I'm so glad we could make that happen. I love how it brought up the queue, though. It did the P Bickford human computing thing, but it didn't do any of the switching. So that was awesome. Anyway, hi guys. This is the best produced show on the internet. We're famous for it. I'm your host, Pete Bickford, and I make ComicBase, get involved with Atomic Avenue, do a few other things. You may have noticed the set looks a little different behind me right now. If you guys were around for the show a couple of weeks ago, you may remember the Great Robot Apocalypse, where my picture of Stan Lee here um, fell off. Yeah, there we go. Lovely. Yes. Decided right during the middle of the show, it was a lovely time for it to fall off the wall, taking a bunch of robots with it, including my dear friend, the black robot back there. It actually knocked his head clean off, causing all sorts of carnage. It was one of the more colorful live streams I think we've ever had. Um, Anyway, something like that happened this week. I was sitting there merrily typing along with Grokbot, which I will get into in a bit, and we had something absolutely astonishing happen. I'm just typing away. I'm having it look up insurance quotes, and out in the middle of nowhere, the robot that we usually have off to the side, this guy, which um, you may recognize him as the robot that hangs in the back of this picture, which ironically did actually survive. Let's see if I can get it on camera. Um, this guy, um, he decided that it was time for him after, I don't know, 12, 13 years, that he was going to finally jump the noose and fall down onto the desk, starting a chain reaction which took any number of other robots with him, which wiped out my joiner print of the robots raising the donut flag on Mount Horabuchi or whatever. It was insane. It was this crash, burn, death. The black robot that I'd prepared so slavishly lost his head once again. It was utter destruction, shattered glass everywhere. It will be a while before we put the whole scene back together, and that's sort of the theme for the show. It's clearly no country for old robots, which we'll be getting into because new robots are taking their place, and it's kind of interesting as we go about these things. Anyway, before we get too far into the whole thing, though, I do want to say hi to everyone. Let's see here. Robbie says, very cool Spanish splash and title for the live stream. I dug it. This is actually, I think, probably about the favorite thing I've ever had Mark do for me. This guy here, No Country for Old Robots. I think Mark knocked it out of the park on that one. So congrats to Mark on that. He says, weather's perfect out in Toledo. We got some good weather for Mike being out in Vancouver, Washington. We have some weather due to roll in here any minute. And we unfortunately do not have our producer with us today because he's in the process of getting flooded out of his place out in New Jersey. So hopefully everyone will get there. Bryce is not the oldest robot I've seen. Yeah, I have older, but I'm going to say the Robot 2000, the blue one in particular, is my favorite robot because I don't know if you should have favorites, but I do. That's this guy right here. I mean, he's like the one that like all clip art is made of. But he's absolutely fantastic. He walks, and after he takes a certain number of steps, the center panels actually open up on him, and the machine guns inside there, fire as he does a rotate step, and then the whole thing repeats. Absolutely fantastic stuff. I should be careful about touching him, which I will get again into in a minute, for reasons. Anyway, Div 187's out here. Jet City Comics, great. Chris Presnell's in the house, and those robots are cool. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, so we had the again, my poor black robot lost his head again. He's not quite how he was. Unfortunately, when Stan Lee's picture fell on top of him, it actually deformed the head enough that he's not going to be right in any kind of real way. I can get him so the head will attach again, but he's not well. There may be an eBay replacement for him in the future. Don't tell him, but that's a thing that might happen. Anyway, that was robot versus backdrop violence. But yes, some robots wreck your set, but some robots actually kind of help, and we'll be getting into those things. And some robots get recalled. So that was fantastic. I don't know if you caught that one, but my phone decided now was an excellent time to weigh in on the show and tell me about robots. Thank you, Gemini Flash, who I did not ask for. And I'm just going to be turning off the phone entirely at this point. Yeah, tech, there, it's fun. And that would be power off. Yes, shutting down. Uh, as you guys remember, old computer stuff. One great saying of computers is a computer's attention span is only as long as its power cord. This was before the age of laptops, but the same general principle holds. If you turn the damn thing off, you don't need to worry about it. Um, anyway, so other things going on. So yes, so I had mentioned that some robots get lead poisoning, and as it turns out, as I was looking for possible replacements for my poor black robot over there, I looked up, of course, my favorite robot on the planet, Mr. Blue over here, and I found out an interesting thing. He popped up. That is the Schilling Robot 2000. It's a reproduction of a very famous Japanese robot called the Astro Strider. But as it turns out, the Schilling guy over here was recalled in 2007. This is real. I mean, I'm not making this one up. This is a real deal, verified against the Computer Product Safety Commission release. So yeah, November 2007, the Massachusetts Tin Toy people, Schilling Associates. If you guys ever got one of those space guns from us at Comic-Con, we ordered them from the same site. We actually got like case quantities of those, like pallet quantities of those to give out way along with the basically the debut of Atomic Avenue was way back when. Um, but anyway, this guy over here turns out that fantastic stuff. Unfortunately, excessive lead. Apparently, the paint on him is bright and shiny and very durable, and apparently very bad for you if you lick it. So this was sold exclusively to adult collectors. I am one of them. But it turns out if you give it to your small child, it would be bad. So it was recalled, and there was it was a big to do at the time. No, but there were no injuries reported of it. Take it away from your kids if you have it. Don't let them play with it, otherwise they'll drop things on it. A shilling was offered to give you a refund or a replacement robot. They will not do this for you now. And honestly, it's probably at some point in the world there's a mint condition version of him sitting in the box right now who just went way up in value as a result of this. But anyway, that's a real thing. There was also the CPSC hit Schilling with a $200,000 civil penalty in 2010 over lead paint violations plus a failure to report. We don't know if this has to do with that particular robot or other things. What can we say? The tin business is a hard one. Honestly, don't lick your robots, people. It's bad. But that's a thing. All right, so into ComicBase these news is after we're done like me about whining about my robots, and I will be doing new things in the background. I can't have a blank wall behind me forever, but it hurts. I miss my old paintings, but it might be time to mix them up. I don't know. I've had them since the beginning of the show and more than that, but maybe it's time to move on. Anyway, but for this week, let's see here. Let's see. Well, let's do content first. All right, let me cue up the appropriate slide and go on to this guy right here. And boom, there we are. In last week's update, this week's update has not come out yet. We're still waiting on, let me see if I can get myself into the key here. We're still waiting on this week's, neither Lunar nor Penguin has come in yet this week. I don't know why, just they're late. But we're hoping to wait till Friday. But we had, in last week, 18,351 new items, 12,161 price and issue updates, 2,275 new covers, for a total of 1.23 million covers all in all. We are just a hair under 1.5 million comic books, and we did blow past 4 million newspapers. We'll be getting to that in a minute because there were actually some really interesting additions on this one. I do love that I could actually ask Grok not Grok, but Claude to break down some of the details of the corrections for the week. So slide is current as of about 15 minutes ago. And it was really, really annoying because, there were 72,513 submissions. And up until I said, "Oh, hey, I want to see some of the other people on the list." So, could you recalculate it? At that point, Mark had come back from lunch and was submitting corrections as I'm having it recalculate. And because the poor thing that helps me with my show prep decided it wasn't going to just lie for me to make me feel better. It took the zero still pending, and it used to be like, yes, there were 72,500 and whatever done and zero left. We had a big pat yourself on the hat, note on the slide. Now it says, no, there's three left. And I'm not going to lie about it because suck it up, Bickford. Anyway, 73 people contributed data this week. Frank Colasurdo is the hero of the week in terms of sheer numbers on it, sending in lots of different things from Liverpool on the newspaper front. Aaron Stile came in and decided to join the fun with submissions on Eris's Birmingham Gazette, which I want to get to in a minute because it's actually kind of fascinating as well as other things. Rounding out the things, we have Brian, Brian Stewart with a lot of fun. Let me look. I had a list of some of the ones that he did. They were actually, I wanted to call it because they were neat. Uh, da, 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 let's see here. Sorry, I wrote myself too many notes, and so it's a little hard to find the things I was looking for. But Brian Stewart sent a lot of really fun foreign comics in, including, let me just look for which. There we are. No, yes, Hermelinda Linda, which is a Mexican witch comic. Marvilla la Mujer Maravilla, which is Wonder Woman in Spanish, and a British magazine, People's Friend, had a lot of submissions. It was published from the Victorian era, starting since around 1869. Fun stuff. The most crowded book of the week, as far as the most people submitting items on it, was Absolute Green Lantern. 265 different corrections crowding in on that particular book. 5 different contributors elbowing in on that for just that one book. Anyway, just thank you to everyone who submitted everything. I mean, it's kind of amazing seeing where I'm saying everyone brings something new to the table. I mean, I'm not going to be the guy to give you Manchester newspapers. That's not going to come from my neck of the world. I visited England often. The last time I was there, this is one of the oldest things I got. This one, it kind of fell out of the closet as I was looking for replacement glass. But this is, let me go full screen on this so you can see it. Come on. Oh, there we go. This is Lot O Fun. The half D is the pre-decimal British currency was LS&D, which is really fun when you're looking at old British comic books. L would be pounds, S would be shillings, D would be pence. But this guy right here, if you can see it, is from was it November 14th, 1914. World War I had just gotten going, and it's a humor paper. It's basically it's kind of like the equivalent of the Sunday Funnies. That one was basically making fun of the Hun, and this is from British folks in there because they were about to be spending a number of years fighting the Hun, and you may as well poke fun at them at that point because no one knew how grim it was all going to get. That's one of the older things I've got, but I'm not going to be the guy who fills in on, as it turns out, 1740s. Um, Papers from Birmingham, and it is amazing that we have people who actually can send that sort of stuff in. So thank you for all that, and thank you to all the people who are just. We have guys who are Kickstarter fans who just really back everything and are really good at them, and have done a lot of supporting of creators and have editions that we would never see otherwise. We have people who are absolutely amazing at variant covers. I'm thinking about you, Randall Paskey, and so forth. And so, thank you all to all the stuff, to the people who specialize in filling in, publication dates and page counts and things like that. It's amazing, and it benefits us also. Just everyone who's hit, filled in something new and hit that submit new or corrected data. Thank you. All I can say. Brian Seuss says, amazing on the colors on that 1914, a lot of fun. I was shocked as well. I don't care what people say about Mylar and keeping it in cool, dry places. It works. I got that off of a guy named Arthur in the Carriages Arcade out in Glasgow. And I can't do the accent nearly as hard as he has it. It's like it's up on Ergill Street. It's absolutely impenetrable, but the stuff in his shop was absolutely astonishing, and it was all cheap. Is I want to say that that one set me back maybe, £10 for that. It was amazing. I got most of the things I have that came from like old Scotland. I got because I basically went to a shop and said I would like to have one of all of it, please. And that's where I got turned on to like the Bruins and Urwilly and all these insane things like that. So yeah, cool stuff. But anyway, thank you, because it's nice having a customer base from all over the world that will send in things, so I don't need to go shopping and flying back suitcases loaded with this stuff everywhere I go. Although I did manage to get pretty much a full run of 2000 AD at one point like that way. So yeah, it's a thing. Um, is this audio is a bit low? Yeah, probably when I do the talking behind my thing in particular. Hopefully, it's acceptable for y'all, in general. Okay, so but let me see other things I want to say. Oh yes, I want to say about the Eris's. So Aaron Style had sent in about 1,200 issues of Eris's Manchester Gazette, and so I wanted to look up a little bit about it, and it was fascinating. It's 1741, one of the older things that are in ComicBase. We do have things going back to the older than that, but this is one of the older you know things that I've hit recently. And I looked up, and it turns out in 1741, George Washington was 9 years old. The king was still George II. He'd been on the throne since 1727. If you guys care about British history, it was still the prime minister was still Walpole. Um, but uh, I asked to say, well, that's interesting, but I don't know, how many of my Brit friends are watching the particular podcast. So I said, well, could you look up some interesting inventions that happened around that time? And it came up with some fascinating stuff. And let me see if I could pull up the slide, because I had it make me one. And let's go ahead and put that on screen here. Yeah, so there we have the Birmingham, Eris's Birmingham Gazette. That is a fake first cover based off of, there's kind of like an AI enhancement of a really, really bad shot that we could find of a much later issue of it. But anyway, the Upper Priory Cotton Mill had just been invented. It was basically a bunch of fingers on a loom, and a bunch of donkeys running in a circle. There was no steam back then to power these things, and so you had a treadmill, not the fun ones down at the gym, but the treadmill that you have to run around in a circle on, where you just led those donkeys round and round and round and round. And the spinning machines were in there. This was one of the very first ones that were in there, and it went bankrupt. It was not a success, but that was the start of the factory system. One Lewis Paul and John Wyatt, apparently the first mill to spin cotton without human fingers. 50 rollers, two donkeys walking in a circle. As it turns out, Wyatt ended up in debtor's prison, um, which is also was a thing at the time. It actually was a thing for about 100 years after that. But then he tried again, and but yes, that was the factory system being born a couple of miles from where the Gazette was born. Same inventor, same year. Wyatt invented the compound lever weighing machine, accurate to a pound or two. But if you're thinking about like the old fish scales, if you ever, if you're down Florida and you have like a ginormous catch that you've had, the weighing machines they put on is you basically hang it from one of those things. This was the start of those sort of contraptions to figure out the weighing of heavy things like that. Huntsman's crucible steel in Sheffield, so the start of the Sheffield steel industry was coming about. And the Franklin stove, fascinating stuff. But of course, my favorite invention from the entire period, it can be none other than Vaucanson's digesting duck. And let me get myself off the camera here just so you can see the full glory, which is Vaucanson's automatic duck. This was, well, it was partly a mechanical wonder and partly a complete put on. The mechanical one part of it, and if you guys ever go to like an old museum, like they have these in the Bay Area once in a while, at the Arts and Sciences building. Absolutely fantastically complicated machines were being built. You remember, hearing about, say, the Mechanical Turk, but as you can imagine from the things behind me, I love gadgets and wind-ups and things like that, where you can have incredibly elaborate mechanisms and simulate, things in the real world. This is a mechanism that simulated the idea of this is a duck that would eat grain and digest it and poop out things. Now, the actual eating part was a fake. They had, basically it would make the eating, pecking, motions mechanically, and then it basically had a secret compartment in the back where it would, poop out the supposed, pre-digested things. There was a little bit of a chemical process they threw in the whole thing. Doesn't matter. There were like 1,000 moving parts in this thing. Absolutely amazing stuff. If you guys have ever been to, like, say, the House on the Rock in Wisconsin, they have any number of these amazing mechanical contraptions that date from the 1700s. And just the inventiveness that went into them is just absolutely astounding. Voltaire was a big fan of it. He was saying, without Vaucanson's duck, quote, you would have nothing to remind you of the glory of France. It honestly, for 1740, they weren't far wrong. Anyway, that's what was happening on the corrections front here. I just wanted to give a big shout out to Aaron Style and everything. Thank you for that. A lot of people say, why do we have newspapers in the database? Part of it was a matter of convenience, and we had to have a way of filing things like the comics buyer's guide in a place where it wasn't going to cram in the comic books and stuff like that. But I do love that as people add in things like, everything, we start out with the New York Times, other things. But I mean, I do love the idea that you can actually, it gives it a place for you to go browse back in history and say, hey, what did the Washington, Post look like on the day Lincoln was shot? What was the life of the average man like in these places I've never been before? And nothing really kind of tells you it like the daily paper. And so it is kind of amazing. And I dig that that's a thing that's in ComicBase these days. So thank you for adding that in. All right, other things that have been happening in the world. Speaking of, well, I guess we got to the Germans. So let me see if I can pop that graphic in, or did I already throw it off? Oh no, I've got you here. I've got you here somewhere. I had you earlier. Oh, don't do this to me. Nope, I've got it. I just didn't have it queued up in my media bay right. All right, so had a really interesting call the other day from a customer who's having trouble with SAP Crystal Reports. You guys might have had problems yourselves. We wound up spending a reasonable amount of time on that this week. So a little bit of backstory to tell you what we were wasting our time on. SAP stands for Systeme Anwendungen und Produkte für Daten. I forget, but it's basically, but it's systems, it's systems, apps and products for data processing is what it really comes down to. But they are a company. They're located out in. When I was at Apple, I had occasion to visit there because we were using their software to help running the actual corporate business of Apple. When you actually are trying to put together a Mac 2, and it has some fantastic number of parts that need to be ordered, and they need to all be sequenced as far as which assemblies they roll into. And back then, they were starting to worry about things like, and what's our carbon displacement when we order these things, and how do we get the credits when the thing's been shifted past this point and that point, and the tariff exposure, et cetera. This company makes that. They make the systems that run the world's big businesses. And they are located in a giant field in the middle of some nondescript German, town. You kind of like take the train and then you're kind of looking out over a vast farmland, and there's a huge office building sitting in the middle of it that you can't believe. Why is this ginormous office building sitting there in the middle of the field? That is SAP. SAP, the reason we care about it today, if we don't run a giant business, is because they decided one day they were going to buy a little company, a little offering from a little company called Crystal Decisions and Business Objects had made a little utility called Crystal Reports, and this was the thing that basically tied into every database known to man at the time. I don't care if it's PFS File or Lotus 123 or Outlook or Excel or whatever else. They had made connectors onto so that you could do reporting off of any database that anyone had ever heard. And so the giant German company said, that's very nice. I think we would like that. And then they bought it, added to their product portfolio. And then a little software company in California at that point, who was using it as well as everybody else at the time, to store information on comic books, said, "Oh, I guess we have a new owner for Crystal Reports," and then that's where that came into. But they, keeping up a long tradition, they did what everyone else has done when they've had Crystal Reports in their portfolio: is they've studiously ignored it as soon as you had it. And yes, my board for punching in camera switches has just decided, no, we're not going to do it. I will do it by hand in the board. All right, so let's do this. I'll turn off the key for me, and I'll punch it in there. So we were using Crystal Reports, as was pretty much anyone, because there was support for it built into Microsoft Access to do things like printing reports and then labels and things like that. And it got passed around. I often say like an unattractive girl at a biker rally, where everyone's had a turn, but no one was really that interested in playing with it. And so they then did what everyone else did and did the minimum possible to keep it going, while still not letting anyone else, you know, I don't know, open source it, do anything else. So it continues to be this hugely dominant program that no one actually maintains in any kind of reasonable way. So it's a long tradition. They are currently on service pack number 40 of the last release that they've been doing. And that's the one that we've rolled into the latest one. They do a service pack release about once a quarter where they'll fix like 2 bugs. Um, and then and sometimes there's like a new version of Windows or of Visual Studio that forces them after, I don't know, 9 months or so to actually update the product in order to keep it going. So we added in the support for the new Crystal Report Service Pack 40 on into the latest version of ComicBase, and for the last couple of weeks we've been having joy because it works great for most people. But when it doesn't work great for you, um, what'll happen is you'll install ComicBase 26.3, and we'd go to print a report, any report, and it would give us an error which just said, "Oh yeah, Crystal reports didn't feel like loading." It would type initializer not not properly initialized or something of the like, and we sit there and say, "Oh, there's a problem with the guy's Crystal reports." Now, when this happens, the usual thing, and we weren't lying to you when we told you this, is when you have a problem in Windows where something doesn't set up like this, what it means is that either the thing you were calling, or the thing that it's calling, or the thing that it's calling, um, doesn't have the things it expects in order to get its job done. We were calling a report in Crystal Reports. The Crystal Reports, meanwhile, said, all right, I need to initialize my report viewer component, and then for some people, boom. The boom typically involved one of a couple different cases, usually involving problems either with your installation or with things on your computer that should have been there and were not there. Which, anyway, unfortunately, Crystal Reports, among the other things they do, is they don't pay a great deal of the time worrying about their own installers. Your installers ought to make sure that all the things you're counting on are there. We, for instance, know that we're going to call Crystal Reports. So we say, hey, make sure that Crystal Reports is bundled in with ComicBase. It's a thing that we do. It's a service we offer. Crystal Reports, meanwhile, is reliant on any number of other components. It's a huge thing. Again, it has support for things like Lotus 123 in PFS notes. And if you ever watch it install, you'll see it installing hundreds and hundreds of modules for items you will never use, just for us to print labels. And one of the items that it should install, which should have been in your Windows, but hey, if it's not with your Windows, why bother to check, say the Germans, is a thing called Visual C++ 64-bit redistributable product patch, whatever, redistributable exe, which is basically a collection of system routines which it is counting on them being there. And if they're not there, then it tries to start up, says something is wrong. It says we could not start up. And then ComicBase says, hey, Crystal reports biffed. And then we give you guys a message, and then we tell you to reinstall and uninstall. And again, most of the time it works if the problem was us or if the problem was Crystal reports. Does not work if the problem was something that Crystal reports was relying on, which just somehow wasn't on your machine. All right, so why are we bothering to tell you this one? Well, because at the end of the day, if you have a problem, we have a problem. So we would like you to not have a problem. So we spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out when, and honestly, it hasn't been a big widespread thing, but there have been, there have been real people doing normal things where this did happen to them. When it did, we were using our new logging facilities that we've added into the new ComicBase 26.3, and we actually pretty rapidly were able to figure out where the problems were coming from. So two big issues. One is when you install software, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. It sounds like I'm trying to pull a fast one on you, but I do mean this. If you go to run an installer and you mean to be installing software, turn off your non-Microsoft virus stuff. So I mean, I know your computer came with super web root defender, McAfee, Norton extended, AVG, all the things. And I know that it feels super scary that if you turn that stuff off, the bad guys will get you. And for a long time, especially 20 years ago, that was a real thing. These days, if you turn that stuff off, Microsoft instantly, and I mean instantly, kicks in with their own antivirus. In their own antivirus is a thing called Windows Defender, and it regularly beats all the third-party stuff anyway, and is in the shootouts because they're Microsoft. They do this 24/7. But it's also free. But 20 years ago, that was not the case, and so there became a way for people, when people were getting hit by hackers and Trojans and worms and all the bad things out there, there was a real market out there for people to sell antivirus software. And then later on, they figured out a really creative thing, which is, hey, if say I'm Norton or I'm McAfee, if I go and I offer Hewlett Packard or I offer Dell 5, 10, 24 bucks to pre-install the demo of my software, well, anyone who remembers the 90s is going to say, hey, I can't be without antivirus. Yeah, good news. My new Dell PC came with a 30-day thing of McAfee Total Protect, you can never turn me off, thing. I'm going to let this run. And probably about 1 out of 3 of those guys who have it on there is going to, and when the 30-day period ends, or 90 or 180, whatever they gave you, when that ends, they say, are you sure you want to, let this lapse? Because you'll be unprotected. You'll probably be doomed. People say, hi, here's my credit card. And please keep me protected. And you spend the rest of your life, downloading update patches and things like that. And the world keeps turning, and McAfee and Norton, all those guys make a quite comfortable living. They had very large and impressive office buildings back in the Bay Area, where I used to drive past them every night when I came back from Apple. You could see them from the highway. But anyway, or at least Norton was up up north of us, but I drove right past the McAfee building for numerous jobs that I was on. But anyway, that's like kind of the game right now. The weird thing is, Microsoft has actually kicked their game into gear pretty hard. It's what you run on your own machine is your business. I will say that the official, what we run in the office here is the one that came free in Windows. And this also goes with the warning that if you're the kind of person who clicks on anything that someone sends you the email, you're going to get infected no matter what you got. Just count on it, because there will be that point where they say, are you sure you want to allow, worm antivirus thing disguised as a PDF file onto your machine? And you'll be feeling coffee deprived that minute, and you'll click yes, and you'll be, oh my God, what have I just done? And then you have to, hose down your machine. Nothing will stop you from hurting yourself that way if you're suitably, caffeine deprived and you just click on things. But if you are the kind of person who says, whoa, why is it asking me to click on things? I did not expect to be installing something when I, was going to view this, accounting file or whatever the guy sent me. If the guy says, whoa, 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 this sounds fishy, then you're going to be okay with whatever. We use the built-in Windows, but that's what we use. But what I will say is, whenever you install anything, if you mean to be installing it, turn off non-Microsoft antivirus for the next 5-10 minutes while it's installing, because otherwise, and this is very frustrating for us as a software developer, if it just gets into its head that anything we're installing might be fishy in the slightest possible way, we can actually watch it. We will watch it copy the file, and milliseconds later delete the file that we just copied onto your disk. And then when we go to say, hey, where's that file? It says, don't know what you're talking about. Maybe it was quarantined. It could have been a thing. We don't know. And because they often use machine learning and things like that, they never really get in trouble by being too aggressive about fake flagging things that they're going to quarantine or delete. And so as a result, there's every incentive in the world for them to say, oh, look, I've saved your computer from 27 different possible threats. I get this, I use a Cronus as my backup solution. And if I don't hose it down, it's constantly warning me about all the things that save me from, much the same way that Dodger has saved our lives thousands of times now from the threats of mailmen and UPS drivers and dogs peeing on our lawn. I mean, it's like I get the 4-star alert that four alarm fire that yes, this is a real problem. Mom, Dad, come quick. There's a dog walking by, and so yeah, your antivirus is often like that. So when you mean to be installing things, turn it off for a second. Now, it often will lie to you, but hey, you tried, you did your thing if you said turn it off. So that is often, usually when installs go wrong, that's number one with a bullet. That is by far the most popular cause. Number two, the thing though that can happen is your system files can get damaged over time, and also just installs can have gone wrong in the past for something else. There's a utility in Windows called System File Checker, which if you ever suspect that your copy of Windows is not working exactly right, there's a trick you can do. Go into your Start menu, type CMD. It's short for command. Wait for a moment. Wait till it offers to say Run as Administrator. Click on that, and then type SFC, like System File Checker, SFC space slash scan now. Scan now is one word, and have it check out all your system files and see if the things that are meant to be there for Windows are there, and if they all look like they're right. And there's a decent chance if your machine's been glitchy that it will say, oh, hey, yeah, I found and fixed a bunch of stuff, but I've repaired them and they should be good now. If so, then that is likely what's going on. There is a third thing. I said there were two, there were really three. The third thing is, again, there could have been something that went wrong earlier where a file that should have been there before just wasn't there. And again, the one that hits us when we're talking about SAP is the VC, Visual C++ 2015 to 2022 redistributable pack, which the fact that I'm saying this out loud on a podcast means that, well, it means two things. It means that I've obviously spent a bunch of time on a phone helping people, fix their computers, but also means that I know that there's no chance in hell a civilian, my mom, any normal person will ever know what the hell I'm talking about and say, oh, well, clearly go to the Microsoft site, download the latest, Visual C++ redistributable pack, and you'll be right as rain. That is not useful advice for, software company that makes comic book collecting software to give to customers. So we decided to do something about this in kind of a big way. I mean, we're just a little tiny company. We help people file their X-Men comics, but we hate it when you guys have to take the call because some big company out in Germany bought a really complicated reporting product that we're trying to use to print a label, and it's causing you grief on your machine because something went wrong on an installer for a desktop loaded with antivirus stuff that you don't remember buying or installing. It just came with the thing, and I don't know, something got wrong about some other install. Either way, it's causing you grief, and we don't want you to have grief. So what we do now, we actually spent a fair amount of time on this last week, is when you launch ComicBase and you get that dreaded Crystal Reports is having a problem, here's a really huge dialogue full of steps you should do to make it all better. All those steps are good. They're fine as far as they go. But we do something else now is we actually will go ahead at that point and automatically detect the exact aspect of what went wrong with it and get you right to the system restore pack that makes it all better. We will, if we have to, we will go out to the Microsoft site and download the latest version of the Visual C++ redistributable pack and say, great, how about if we make this all better for you now? And we just give you a big button that makes it all better. And when it's all done, worst thing you do is we might have to say, hey, restart your machine now and it'll be all better. But that is a thing we have done this week. So hopefully this will do it. And Robbie says, today when I was using installing the latest ERM build, I got the C++ menu. I click close and the update installed. Check the version is 5355. Is everything good? Yes, it is. We've also included, if you're checking the prerequisites in ComicBase, unlike, even though it's not really our prerequisite, it's really Crystal Reports' prerequisite. We also make sure that you have the Visual C++ 2015 to 2022 x64 version installed. And if you don't, you can go ahead and click to install it. The prerequisites, if they don't come checked, it means you've already got them anyway. We're just listing them off there, but you could reinstall it if you want. But yeah, so that's you go. Let's see here. Yes, Mike Beam says, unpopular opinion, antivirus software as are a virus. Not unpopular at all, man. It is literally vast office buildings were based on the idea of scaring people to death and then selling them the solution. And antivirus is absolutely one of those things. The thing that's downside about the whole thing is that there really is a real threat out there. I mean, if you had an unprotected PC out in the world, it takes you a matter of, it's not just, hours, it's minutes. Like if you take a blank PC, stick it onto the internet, and say, yeah, stand yourself up here, and just tell me anytime someone tries to connect to you. I guarantee within about half an hour, someone will have, it's called port scanned you, but basically, because they're basically dialing all the IP addresses on the entire internet saying, hey, what's out there? Is there something we could get to? Somebody will have come by in that half an hour that you took your brand new PC that didn't talk to anything, was not configured for anything, and someone will be starting to try to talk to it and say, hey, buddy, interested in a little traffic on this port? And if so, if your thing had no protections whatsoever, if you didn't have firewalls, if you didn't have things, no, there is crazy how much activity there is to try to screw with your machine. But it's also crazy that basically all of it's already been handled by Microsoft between Windows Defender and Windows Firewall and everything else like that. And the third party market for it, except for very specialized circumstances, largely that is the virus. And most of the things you will install are actually worse than having a virus in terms of like what they do to your machine's performance. That being said, your business, but I'll tell you what we do inside the office. That's that. So, all right. Let's see here. I think that is all we had in the chat for now, and let's go ahead and move on to other things that are going on because man, it's been a big week. Um, all right, so Atomic Avenue, and I'm going to tell you some of this one because the rules of engagement on Atomic Avenue is I know what code I checked in this week, but I also know I'm not allowed to talk about it till it's actually shipped. Um, so Atomic Avenue probably seen has undergone a lot of changes in terms of the aesthetics of everything else. We polished up a lot of things this week. But big thing about Atomic Avenue that is coming, and I'm allowed to say it's coming, is we are starting to relook at how refunds and shipping is done in the system. And we think we are going to have a solution for you that we are not quite able to show you just this very second, but maybe by next week, which will make a lot of things a lot smoother, a lot simpler, and not make you as reliant on things like stamps.com in order to get packages coming and going, and also some better tracking options and things like that. So lots of cool things like that. Watch on that one. It is coming. Um, other things that are happening. I talked. Oh, I'm sorry. Other things are happening in ComicBase. I talked about Crystal Reports to death, but let me talk about some of the other things that we just shipped recently. If you have the latest build, so we talked about Crystal Reports. We fixed a hang that a lot of people hit, and I'm going to absolutely apologize for this one. It's a weird one because it never hits anyone in testing who's already had pictures installed ever. But if you're coming in on a brand new spanking new machine, like, so the kind of person that we want to offend, not at all, the person that we most want to have a really seamless experience, depending on how buff your machine was, we actually could get you into a spot where as you're downloading the pictures, the progress bar could get stuck as it's waiting for the pictures to decompress, where it would do the first bunch where you see that it had downloaded the pictures, and you say, okay, yeah, the first have been there, and now I'm going to download the next batch. And there's a program called 7-Zip that we use for decompression, and it could, they call it pump the dialog box. So, but basically, you could run out of computer resources while it was doing its thing, and it wouldn't get around to telling us that it was finished, and so we would sit there waiting forever for it to tell us it was finished. And so from ComicBase standpoint, it looked like you just kind of hung. Really, your computer's just sitting there forever waiting for 7-Zip to say done and go on to the next thing, but the signal never came. We have fixed that one. So very sorry for everyone who ran into that one. I'm very, very glad it is fixed now. So huzzah for that one. Other things that are kind of just nice quality of life things. We found this during testing of other things that we're going to get into in future weeks. Just some weird things where like we're getting very persnickety about all things that normally I'd be like, it's a little off, but no big. Yeah, no, we're like, yeah, let's just fix every last little bloody thing about them as we go. When you change a series media type, so let's say I've got a series like, I don't know. There was one, Buffy the Vampire. Was it Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Walk on the Wasteland Walk, something like that. Alan DeCamp, if he's watching, will tell me immediately which one it was. I'm sorry, it was Vampirella. It wasn't Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But Wizard had put out a particular comic of it that it looked like a comic book, but it was not a comic book. It was actually just a magazine, I believe, or a book. And so we had to change its series media type. But if you sat there and you said, well, I have this thing in VF condition, and you change that to be a book, books do not have VF as a condition. Books have things like new, new, acceptable, poor, etc. They have conditions like that because they're booky conditions. They're not, comic conditions. And if you hadn't already added the condition in, you'd get an error for a second and say like, well, you just added a condition that we've never heard before. It would bark at you, and that would go and add the condition anyway, but it'd bark at you first. We got rid of the barking at part. We thought that was kind of excessive. And also we decided that, well, we're adding things like new variations, new conditions, things like that. Hey, if we got to add one, how about we add it using the actual value that you gave the old one, even if it's one we've never heard of, instead of, I think, if, in the past, if we did, some condition that didn't really belong there, we would always default it to be one percentage, 100. We would treat it like it was essentially near mint. But instead, if you've set up a percentage of near mint to something other than that, we carry that over faithfully now, even if you're changing the type of item it is, where even the condition wouldn't have necessarily even applied before. When it does apply, it'll apply using the same dollar calculations as it did before. So, yeah, that's good. Oh, Alan DeCamp says, yeah, I just got here. Heard my name. Hi, everyone. Hi, Alan. All right, so that's there. We did a lot of tweaking on the dark themes. So the dark themes got a major workup in the last 3-4 weeks. They first time out when we first did the dark themes, we did it honestly because dark was getting to be like a thing. Adobe had just done a dark version of Photoshop and thought, well, we could start it. It's not kind of cool and techy looking, and we took a first pass through it and we did the things that Adobe was doing at the time. Now it's like 10 years later, and we said, okay, we've had a lot of dark themes in the world. How do we refine this so it covers more things? It covers the kind of components that weren't easily styled before, that we do a lot more things with. What happens if, you have, well, you want to prevent where you're drawing black type on a dark gray background on top of a white divider line and things like that. We did a lot more polish of that sort of stuff, and that looks a lot better now. We fixed a problem with the regular issues filter. So if you've ever said, I want to print a report and I only want regular issues, but if you've done that to books, turns out books, and it was kind of related to the whole, weird types and conditions thing. We weren't qualifying that properly, and you could have gotten an error, so that is now fixed. And we have, if you ever have to select a new database when you're launching ComicBase, like let's say move drill database, originally that would kind of throw out the initial, when you first went to a title, it would throw off the drawing. It wouldn't show its pictures right away. That's fixed. A bunch of stuff like that. So I won't bug you guys to death with all of it. We did a lot of improvements to our label code even after the initial launch. This was in keeping with the crystal report stuff. But if you guys are still printing labels on strange forms and things like that, hopefully you're having a good time with it now. If you're not, please get in touch with us after the show, pbickford@humancomputing.com. I will put that up there. Actually, I would put it up there, but it's not going to trigger because my board isn't triggering on right now. But pbickford@human-computing.com, and we'll certainly try to hook it up. But I think at this point, the label printing weirdnesses on weird stocks issues that people had, I think with one possible exception involving a really cool looking Canon printer that costs about 50 cents a label to print. Other than that one, I think we've got that one to bed. So hopefully that's all good. How do you get the update? Go to internet, check for updates. Make sure, very useful, if you go before that, say setup and go change your preference to when you're checking for updates to say, I want to include interim updates. We did make it so all the big fixes, all the things that are likely to have hit anyone, including at hang when you're installing pictures the first time, they are part of the main update now. So if you saw when you went to check for regular content updates, there's a new program update available. Just go ahead and say, yeah, update that one. And you'll see that you're getting 26.3.1 point 52 some high number, and then you should be good. And yes, we covered the robot disaster. Yeah, you'll have to rewind the tape. Sorry about that. All right, so all right, other things that have been going on. We talked about the Slack channels. We talked about Birmingham and and Prime Minister Walpole. I talked as much as I'm allowed to about Atomic Avenue for right now. Last thing I want to say, which is kind of significant, is we are getting out of the credit card game. What the hell does Bickford mean about that? Um, so a lot of things I've been doing in recent months have all been around tightening up security in all things digital surrounding, both myself and Atomic Avenue and ComicBase and things like that. A lot of the initiative behind things like passkeys came out of both the general effort we've been doing and also, my sister got her card hacked at one point, and it messes up your life if someone gets a hold of, especially your email password. And it turns out there was technology available. And I'm really happy as I'm going around to different sites now and having to sign up different accounts for new computers, things like that, to see more and more people are embracing passkeys. Because passkeys are a fantastic thing where I can have a secret which is tied, to a simple, code that I know, like, a 4-digit code, or better yet, something like my fingerprint. I can just touch a fingerprint sensor on my Mac or on my PC, or sometimes your face. But the real business of that is stored in a cipher key that's held in a really specially protected memory on your machine. Like, you can't get in there with electronic tools to get to it, because it's perpetually kept encrypted. And that talks to, on the other side of things, it can only talk to a proper site that it was meant to talk to. It can't talk to someone who phished the site, who's pretending to be Samsung but isn't really Samsung, who pretends to be Best Buy but isn't really Best Buy. The key simply won't work. And then when you go to verify a passkey, nothing that's important nothing like a password travels over the internet. You basically have got a computation between the secret key that was maintained on your machine, and the little finger lock or whatever else you did to unlock that trades your mark against, to decrypt something that's based on the encryption mark of the other side, which again only works if you're talking to the real guy. It does not work. I mean, if I pretended to be human computing and I wasn't, unless I can show you their SSL certificate signed as part of the whole thing, it literally won't take the exchange. So um, the secret stuff stays secret. It stays on your machine. Their verification stuff stays secret. It stays on their machine. Nothing important flies in the middle, and so you get this really nice high-tech sense of security without, the inconvenience of remembering, like, 98 character passwords with, 73 different, funny marks and things like that, or doing what everyone else does and just, say, well, I've got my one secret password and reusing it everywhere. And then when something gets hacked, you get hacked everywhere. I love the idea of getting rid of passwords, and so we've been doing that. There's a similar thing that is happening where you can get rid of credit cards. And now, how do you get rid of credit cards and still allow people to sign up for, say, recurring renewals? And the answer is, it's a thing called vaulting. The idea is, so instead of us holding onto your credit card, we say, like, hey, I want to, buy next year's, copy of ComicBase. What we do is we don't store your credit card, anymore. We always store it, encrypted, and all the things with, compliance. And we've never had a data breach that way. We've always kept it safe. But the thing I like even better is, what if we got out of the business entirely? What if we just never had your credentials on any level of that? Instead, what we can do is we can say, look, we know who you are because of that pass key and because, you've authenticated onto our system. We can sign in something which basically puts a combination between our security and PayPal security or Stripe security, which basically identifies you as, this is you as their customer, blah. And then the same way you signed a pass key that doesn't need to travel over the net, you can have recorded your, credentials once with that authority, PayPal or Stripe. And then when you want to renew, when we want to say, okay, this customer's due for an update, we don't need to send anything confidential over the network to them. We just need to say, hey, this customer that we know from this thing that we've encoded with your system, would like to authorize this charge for the amount of money, and then they unlock the stuff that they've had on their side securely. Nothing that critical has to fly over the net in between. And more importantly, our servers never need to hold your credit card at all. And we think that's beautiful. So we are slowly getting out of the game as far as storing your credit cards in any way. We'll, for convenience, just let you recognize which passkey you're holding on to. We'll say, well, yeah, it's the one that had the 4 digits there, but we don't have the rest of the number after that. This is a process we're starting right now. So if you were to go and look at your account, you say update your payment information. What it does now is it will then store it. It basically clears it off of our account, vaults it in with Stripe or the payment utility if you're using PayPal as the processor, and then we just keep the last 4 digits just so you can remember which card it was. But then that's kind of the game. So yeah, the security, situation just on the internet, it's emerging. I'm glad that we've been really aggressive about being out front of the whole thing, because it's, we got enough crap to worry about, and we don't want to be holding anyone's confidential stuff. Your database is your business, your computer's your business, and we want to help you keep track of your comic books and basically not know anything secret about you other than that. That's kind of where we stand on things. Very libertarian on it. And it says, let's see. Scott says, I need to get used to hearing passkey in this way. That's how my that's how my last name is pronounced. Sorry, you're fine. Brian says, if my phone holds my passkey, what happens when I lose my phone? Awesome, interesting question. So what happens is if you're using either like if you're two major platforms. So this one is an Android phone. This one is using Google's password manager type thing. So whenever it pops up and I go to a site and says, "Hey, you want me to remember the password?" What's really going on, right? I used to think what was going on, and maybe this was true at one point, but I used to think what was going on is, oh, gee, do I want to send my password to, super secret top stuff.com? Do I want to send that to Google? Oh, I'd be overjoyed to send that to Google. No, that's not really what's going on. What's really going on is there's a chip inside your phone. Again, it's the equivalent of the trusted platform module chip that's on Windows, where it's a small amount of memory, but it's a permanently encoded, trusted thing that nothing is allowed to access out of. It acts as a vault. Um, you know, Things don't normally get in there. You can give it the pass keys to open up the key box, and you can ask for one little tiny bit of it, which reads the credential for that thing, and that's all that you can do. You can't just, again, even with electronic gear, like if the FBI were to to lock into it and say, I want to read the charge state of the different things on there, it wouldn't get anything it could use because it's all encrypted. Anyway, so the real secrets on your phone are kept that way. The thing that you are sending over to Google is the key, so that it says basically, hey, next time you need to go and read my real credential, I'm going to give you a set of keys. It's a one-off. It's authorized to just this site, and it only works if you really are the other site. So if I'm if I think this is my Best Buy password, and you're I don't know, Best Buy 2 or something, if you're just, or Bob's Temu Best Buy or whatever else, if Temu Best Buy says, hey, can I have your password you gave for that thing, they won't they won't be able to encode each other's stuff, and so it will not work even if you said, yeah, here's my password, because it won't be able to take it. It's encoded wrong. It's this fascinating thing called public key encryption. There's an explainer on the website if you actually go on ComicBase.com, and I think right by when it says, do you want to create a passkey, there's a thing that says, what's a passkey? Click on that, because we actually did kind of a neat job explaining how the whole tech works. But Google Password Manager works the same way. It works that way for passwords, and it works that way for passkeys. So it's storing the stuff on your secret thing on your phone. Brian asked a great question. Then, well, what happens when the secret area of my phone goes away? Aha. Turns out Google Passkey Manager, what they will trade between things, is they'll make sure that all your devices can sync with each other. So your Google account back at Google, whatever else, has got something that allows it to authenticate the store. If I have a second Google phone, it has got something where it can decrypt the store again, so it can put that back on the new device so that your old passkeys get restored and so forth. As long as you have at least one device that hasn't been ripped off, then they can get to it. And if you are down to, I have only one device, then there's a very elaborate credential plan that they can do to give you access to your account after some amount of days, where they basically go into what's stored at Google Central. But that is much more involved. It's, on the other hand, if I have any other devices at all, it's automatically backed up. So that Google Password Manager takes care of that in the Google sphere. So if you ever used Chrome, if you ever used an Android device, etc., Google's taking care of that stuff automatically for you. On the Apple sphere, iCloud is doing the exact same thing. So any Apple device is synced up with every other Apple device on the whole thing. That's why the only two passwords that matter in your world, if you're an Apple guy, is what's my iCloud password and what's my machine's password, or what's my phone's punch-in code. As long as you remember those, you don't need to remember any other passwords. Everything else is stored encrypted in a way that no one else is getting them, and also that the next time you buy, you lose your phone or whatever else, it'll automatically get restored back in a way that will work on your new phone. So it's pretty slick. Works that way for passwords and passkeys these days. Anytime you get a chance to sign up for a site and they give you a passkey option, take it. because the really good ones, once you do that, will actually even delete the stored password you had. So then you become unhackable on that site. The only thing you can get on that site is another person who really is you, who really is on that site. So that's a thing. And I don't trust Google either. I mean, look, again, it's like if what they were saving on Google's thing was my actual password, it'd be like, to hell with you. And by the way, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to do that when you log on to Google and you say, remember my Wi-Fi network? It would actually go and save in clear text your Wi-Fi's password when you back up to Google. That was a real thing that happened. I don't know if it's still true. Probably isn't, but that was at one point really what they did. What happens these days, on the other hand, is the only thing they have is an encrypted key, which even they can't read in any kind of normal fashion. I think with enough, with enough court orders, they could get someone at Google Central's, security department to get out their cipher key, which enciphers the master vault, which then allows them to go and encipher the vault for you. But that's in any kind of normal circumstances. You could have any Google employee that could be looking at the thing, and they wouldn't see a damn thing that was useful. Agent Game says, if anyone wants to steal my identity, they can have it as long as I don't have to take it back. Yeah, it's a thing. All right, so let me see here. The other things I wanted to say here. Oh yes, I want to talk about the robot that helped. So we talked about robots killing the place. We talked about robots that giving you lead poisoning, which, along with love, always love, but along with that. But I got a chance this week to try out a robot that has actually been helpful. I'm going to admit at this point, I call him Marco the marketing bot. Marco helped write this section, so take that for what it's worth. I mean, if I'm lying, I will tell you. But but Marco got to help author this portion of the show, so keep that in mind. Let me see if I can get this onto the screen, because this is kind of hilarious. So I have been, we are a small company. We are always looking for anything which is an edge. That is just life. And so if anything that I can throw a computer at to automate, I'm going to throw the fastest, biggest computer I possibly can get at it. I'm going to embrace technology like crazy, because it's the only way a company like ours can stay nimble and lean and competitive. If your competitor is, a Microsoft or an IBM or somebody who can have, 40, spuds, doing nothing much, but if they live in the same sphere as you, you still got to be able to bring it against guys like this. So I've always been, okay, what edge can I possibly bring? So when AI came along, I was like, well, what can you do? And as soon as there was something like, oh, wait, this is actually making something faster or better, or it's useful this way, of course I'm going to use it. So I've been hearing a lot lately about agents. Now, we use an agent very simply, say on ComicBase, when you go and you make a new title. And let's say Mark Castaneda was indexing the titles for Penguin and Lunar this last week. That's the 2,000 corrections he put in. So when we have a new title, we've got a description from the publisher. We've got a publisher name. We've got the name of the title, and that's all they're going to give us. They don't give us the genres, for instance. What we have is every single time there's a new title on that, we take all the information we do have, and it can do internet searches, it can do whatever else, and we try to say, what is a list of 5 to 7 tags that you're 100% certain of that apply to this new title that I've never heard of before? And I mean, look, if it's Conan the Barbarian, I'm going to guess sword and sorcery. I'm going to guess Conan. I'm going to guess, Red Sonja might be in it. So there's certain ones you can guess, just, fantasy, right? But if it's, there was one called Hoagie. I don't know what Hoagie is. And based on the description from the publisher, neither the publisher. But anyway, we have an agent that will actually go out there and try to come up with classifications for titles like that. That's built into ComicBase. We did that as part of one of the things we did. Well, one of the things I've always been interested in is, well, what other things could you do to make my life easier if I had more assistance on things? And so let me see if I can get this onto another screen so I can show it to y'all. I'm going to put this onto, we'll try it there. All right, so let me see if I can show my PC screen, which would be here. And so this is Grokbot. So what the heck is a Grokbot, you say? So Grokbot is so Grok had come into the AI game a little on the late side, but what they decided to do is they were going to work with a company they had just acquired called Cursor, and they were going to really take advantage of. Um, why are you not showing up on my other screen? Sorry, I want to get to this point where I can see it as well as you guys. So give me just a sec here. Might need to fish this around a little bit so I find the right place to see this, because this is one of those things where like it's not on my main screens and I have to be able to read it. So bear with me. If not, I'm just going to paraphrase. Um, but anyway, what Grok is, so Grok is it's a chatbot like anything else. Grokbot was used by a company called Cursor um, to allow you to easily automate things, and they did it in a kind of a neat way. Where they made it very, very, very user friendly. Like I'm going to say, this is the most mom friendly version of an agent that I've ever seen. Now, so can I make this any larger? No, of course I can't make it larger. So I'm just going to have to read this from afar. That's terrific. Um, anyway, so what they have you do is you say, okay, I want a new agent. And the very first thing I thought when I got a chance to try out Grokbot is, well, I kind of feel like, I'm getting screwed on my insurance. I'll bet you there's someone out there who can, go through all the trouble of finding new insurance quotes for me. And so I went and I said, okay, make a new agent. What do you want to call your agent? I said, he's Doug the insurance bot. And Doug the insurance bot's whole job in life is to, I gave him some info. I said, look, I want you to go out and quote insurance rates for me. So I gave him some info on my properties, my cars, my place down in Florida, my place here. And I said, all right, look, so here's what I'm paying now. Here's what I got covered now. What can you find for me? And then Doug, the insurance bot, I sent him off, to the races, and he went off and is finding me quotes and asking me, he says, well, could you live with a little less coverage on this? Hey, well, if you drop the comprehensive on your old truck, stuff like that. And so Doug does that one. I had Damon, the concert bot. Damon's job in life is to go through my record collection and say, hey, look at everything I've got here and see if you can find any shows coming up in Nashville for anyone that's in my record collection that might be fun to see. And from this, I found out that who knew that, not only have the Sex Pistols reformed, fair enough. I'm not a big fan of the Sex Pistols. I mean, I'm a bit of a punker, but I always thought they were kind of crap as a band. The one thing I liked about the Sex Pistols was John Lydon, who's the one guy who will not be performing with them at the Basement Bowl out in, I believe, on the 14th. No, he'll be with Public Image Limited, which I'll be seeing the next night. But so they have a new lead singer, and they've taken the same crappy bassist and the same crappy drummer, and they're doing their thing, but with some new front dude. Anyway, but I found out that's a thing. I also found out that, oh, good Lord, what's their name? Lords of Acid are also going to be playing, which I would not have spotted, which I'm probably way too old for at this point. But that's a thing. So Damon the concert bot is there to find me new shows, and I say, hey, look, check every week, man. When you're all done, just send me a Slack note. Anyway, so I'm getting going, and I think to myself, well, okay, I need to put together the show, right? And when I put together the show, I kind of have an idea for what I want to do. I've got it's, Agent of Camp says ZZ Top might be canceled now. Yeah, they might be. Yeah, R.I.P. Frank Beard. Although actually, I think Frank. I don't think Frank was actually their drummer for a bit. I think they had another guy sitting in for him, but I could be wrong. Anyway, um, but I had a Claude skill, which I'd set up earlier, which does the thing of saying, all right, look, I know I'm going to want to talk about everything that's new with ComicBase. I know I'm going to want to talk about how much content we've been pushing. I want to do things like that. And then I will give you a topic for the week on something I think is special. I want to highlight. I want you to quiz me about this, this, and this. And then when that's done, we should start working on show graphics and then see what we can put together. That's my prep work for the show. And I thought, okay, I've destroyed my office with the robot catastrophes later, but at the same time, I'm doing a lot of cool things with agents and other bots like that. So, hey, let's talk about No Country for Old Robots, right? So that was the concept. I had Mark go out and make me the art, which he did a fantastic job on. And then I said, all right, well, okay, so I have this Claude skill that will cough up, I had it go, and it does the SQL queries to read through all the corrections and categorize them down and make me nice little infographics for all the stuff, and that's all cool. It's again, it's nothing that you can't do yourself, but it's awfully handy to have somewhere where I said, hey, yeah, that thing that we did, could you do that again? and it comes out. Or I can say things like, "Hey, I'm looking for inventions that came out around 1740 that might give you a little bit of the character of the times. What do you know? Oh, that's cool. A duck, a mechanical duck that pretends to eat grain and poop. Well, draw me a picture, you know, or find me a picture and comp it into a show graphic. Awesome, because that's half an hour I didn't have to take, and so I actually managed to get some of this stuff done today. But anyway, so I'm doing the whole thing, and I have a Claude skill that does a lot of this stuff, but I wanted to use Grokbot to try it out. So I think the funnest exchange of the entire thing is let me see if I can get it on the main monitor here. Sorry, I have too many mice mouse things open in the wrong place. So this is Grokbot. Let me go ahead and put it up there. Boom. And let me go back to the program thing, and let me take myself off of it. So there. So this is Grokbot. Again, Grokbot, very, very mom-friendly agents. You literally just spin up an agent and say, look, hey, you're Doug. You're the insurance agent. I want you to do this thing. Some people use it to do their weekly shopping. Some people do it to organize their exercise schedule. Some people use it to check in all their code requests, and pull requests, things like that. I used it to find me concerts and insurance and things like that, and I also used it to help me with the show. Funny thing is I already had a lot of the hard work had already been done with Claude as far as digging it up. So what I did is I actually told, hey, Grokbot, would you mind terribly? Here's the main things I want to do for a show. Like there's the part at the start where I have to go, and once you create the show and I give it a description for what the show is going to be about, I said, hey, okay, I need you to go and go to StreamYard and create the live stream. Now the first time out, watch me how I do it. And I'll log in for you, and then watch what I did, and then I want it to be the top news item on the site for a certain amount of time, and after that, I want it to, I want to have the word live, on the whole thing. I want to, once you create it, I want you to link into the YouTube channel and so forth, and I want to expire in 3 months, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a little ritual I go through every time, and then I want you to put in the graphic that Mark gave me for the whole thing, and then I want you to lather, rinse, repeat to the other sites and so forth. So I got to automate that part of the site for me. It's pretty cool. You just kind of lead it through the whole thing once, and it kind of follows you on. But then I got to the end, and the hilarious part was I sit there and say, hey, so yeah, good job on setting up the scut work of the whole stream. How do you feel about bossing around Claude? And it was hilarious because it was like, boss around Claude. I am so on that. And I mean, which is hilarious because I'm basically asking one company's bot to boss around another company's bot, and it could not have been more thrilled at the opportunity. So basically I said, yeah, I've already got this Claude skill set up. What I want you to do is, act as its manager. And I'm basically going to tell you, hey, I'm going to need this kind of stuff over here. I want this kind of color for the site. I want you to get, arrange for these graphics to appear. I want you to make graphics for your own to demonstrate how the Grokbot thing worked and so forth. And I want you to be the guy who kind of coordinates getting it all loaded into my media package so that it's all good to go. And one very late entry on the whole thing is I said things like, oh, hey, yeah, I want to talk about the Crystal Reports thing, and I want to talk about the, uptight Germans out in the field. Hey, there was a perfect picture of the uptight Germans out in the field. Could we, have you find that? Because the best clip art I could ever think of is the one they used in their own installer. I point it to the install package for Crystal Reports, and I say, yeah, look for pictures of uptight Germans. It says, oh, I think I've got it right here. All right, great. Stick the SAP logo on there. Tell me what it stands for again, and make that into a slide to load onto the deck. And you just basically just said, yeah, work with me on that one. And when it could do it itself, it did it itself. When it could fire off the stuff to Claude to do like the data computational stuff that I hadn't set up with it, it said, oh yeah, hey Claude, you're my minion now. Go off and do that stuff there. And it just coordinated the whole thing. I gotta say, a great deal of fun. And now of course the downside is part of what it does this thing is it drafts the bullet points that I'm reading off of on a little text file right now, which is, and it of course wants to throw its own color on that. And so I'll read the color it gave me. It was clothes, the robot that helped Marco the marketing bot. Um, and so, yeah, deal I want to say is I got a deal on Grokbot. Basically, I just coincidentally canceled a second Claude subscription that I'd had. I was rocking two Claude Max subscriptions at the same time this last month. You might have noticed there've been a lot of comic-based builds. Yes, I've been pounding it that hard. But I'm like, okay, I'm looking at what's ahead, and honestly, I don't need quite that much horsepower anymore. So I canceled one of my Claude Max subscriptions earlier in the day. And as I'm scrolling X that night, I saw a thing from some marketers over at X, or XAI, who said, "Oh yeah, hey, we have a deal going on Grokbot, which normally you have to have this $300 a month subscription for. Where if you can send us a cancellation notice from any Claude product, we'll go and comp you a month, and so you can try Grokbot and see if you like it." I'm like, oh, I'm so on that. Because as it turned out, I just in my email had the cancellation notice from my second Claude Max account. So I DM'd it over to the guy, and a day or two later, he's all right, you're in. And he gave me the keys to a Grokbot account, which I get for a month or so. So I get to do amazing things like finding concerts and better insurance rates and planning shows. And I think their plan is they want to get me hooked and then say, well, at the end of the month, well, surely you'll want to at least keep the $60 a month plan that we now have and other things like that. And we'll see. I mean, it's the new Grok. I like I like its personality. I got to say that Claude can be a little dire. Claude, I mean, all these things do have a personality. Claude's down to business. It gets the job done. Is an absolute workhorse of a thing. But Grok, I'm going to say, is just fun. And it will tell me goofy things that I did not need to know, like about digesting ducks. Um, and it's kind of a joy to hang out with on that level. On the other hand, it will also hype itself up, and again, the glee it gets when you ask it to like command Claude around is hilarious for me to see. So that's a thing. And so I had said, yeah, and I had gone and made my own coworkers notes on the whole thing. So let's see here. Yeah, no, so so I just basically said, yeah, I've got coworkers now. I've got Doug the insurance bot, Alden the purchasing bot. Oh, Alden the purchasing bot, by the way, fantastic job. I spent 6 months hunting around for barcode scanners made in the USA, and he was able to tell me in a matter of 20, 30 minutes that no, there's not a damn thing out there in the entire market that you can lay your hands on that's all even ridiculously appropriate. Lots of things that are assembled in the USA, but if you're sitting there saying I would prefer not to have parts from China, yeah, he basically could give me very authoritative sources that tells me I'm absolutely screwed on that thing, which I knew, but I knew it after about 6 months. He got me that answer very quickly. Um, anyway, but Alden the purchasing bot, on the other hand, did manage to find me some other parts that were very, very difficult to find for some other little bits of gear we use around here, and he did it quite efficiently. Very, very happy with him. But it's nice having other coworkers here to run some of the errands for you. So it's a deal. Yeah, we had one robot wreck the place this week. We had another robot that was going to try to get you killed with lead poisoning, even though he's awfully adorable. And then we have Marco, and Marco's actually helping you make progress. So Marco wrote that last line, but I'm going to say, yeah, he earned it. So, all right, that's about it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope it was interesting to you. If you have other questions about things like agents and AI and comics and Germans and fields and things like that, let me know. P. Bickford at Human-Computing, as always, is my way to get a hold of me. And I'm going to see if one button on my whole thing will close the show. If not, it's going to be a hard end. But I'm going to hope the end show button works. And here we go.